Welcome to the Irish Pagan School podcast. Your hosts are authors and co-founders of the Irish Pagan School here in County Waterford, Ireland, Laura O'Brien and Jon O'Sullivan. Fáilte.
Is the Dagda the father of all of the Irish gods? Well, Dagda agus Fáilte. Hi, hello, and welcome. Jon O'Sullivan from the Irish Pagan School. And this is a guest or question which does come up from time to time, and it is based on some pieces of information which are in fact wrong. So, ni answer, not hard to say. No, the Dagda did not father all of the Irish gods. There are many different Irish gods which do not have a blood relation or a familial relationship with the Dagda. So where does all of this come from? Where does this confusion come from? And there are two main things that we point at when we talk about this error or this misunderstanding about the Dagda and his children. So the Dagda does have many children. There are a number of different deities which do have the Dagda as their father. Actually, interestingly, there's some deities who don't even have him as their biological father, but have him as their foster father. But I suppose we'll touch into that a little bit later on. So where does this confusion have? Where does the confusion come from? And there are two things that we point at. The first is one of the Dagda's names. So the Dagda as a god has many different epithets or names that are attached to him, and one of those names is Olathair. Now, Ahar is the Irish word for father, but some people misconstrue OL as in an Irish spelling or a different spelling of ALL or all. Now, in the Norse pantheon, we do have an all-father, which is Odin, and Odin is said to be the father of all of the other deities. Now, most commonly the Norse pantheon, he is wed to Freya, who comes from the Vanir. I think he's Aesir. I'm not an expert in the Norse side of things, and I have read some stuff, and I am fascinated about it too. But where in that pantheon, he is said to be the All Father, one who pretty much did give birth or is the main central individual or father figure of the gods. We have in other god like pantheons as well. Zeus, for example, is his brothers Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades are the children of Kronos, but from Zeus comes the rest of the deities. So there is, culturally speaking, these other pantheons which have a central or titular father figure for the rest of the deities. And so much so that Julius Caesar is said to have commented on this by using the term dispater. And this is this idea that there is this central father figure in pretty much all pantheons that he experienced as he came and conquered, let's be fair, out of Rome. He was attributing a lot of his understanding of spirituality and pantheon-based structures to other cultures out there. And so as he looked into other cultures, he would say, oh, well, this god is a god of medicine, so they must be X god, or this is a god of sun, so they must be equivalent of Apollo. So he was likening everything back to his own spiritual structures. But there's a problem with that because it's not allowing space for the cultural narratives that define the deities or these spiritual expressions of deity in the uniqueness of their culture based on the landscapes where they grew. So, another talk for another day. Let's bring it back to the Dagda. The Dagda is said to be this Olathair, but it's not all father. It is great or ample father. And again, I have made that mistake in the past, and I own that. Like I used to think it was I used to think the translation of Olathair was father of many, which is what is commonly accepted out there. But that is wrong, and I have made that mistake in the past myself. So if you're watching an older video and you're like, that guy said it wrong, absolutely, hands up, will definitely say, because when we know better, we just do better. So it's not father of many. It is, even though he is a literal father of many, the Olathair translates as great or ample father. So if we were to normalize the language a little bit, great or ample is probably big. Father, make that a bit more casual, daddy. So in a way, you might say that the Dagda is the big daddy of many deities, but also it is his nature and it is a part of how he, in my personal opinion, working with the deity, just how he is. It's his nature. It's how I experience the Dagda from time to time with that big daddy energy. So he is a father. He definitely is a father, and we have a list of a number of different deities which are said to be children of the Dagda. Now, very famously, of course, we have the goddess Brigid. So Brigid, being goddess of smithing, poetry, and prophecy in a way, is a very primal deity in some ways, but also a goddess of healing as well. So there's a number of different multi-talented, multiple skills here that are associated with Brigid, and it could be an entire separate video, or there are a lot of other content out there on Brigid. But Brigid is daughter of the Dagda, and of all of the children really that I have explored actually, I did a class at the Irish Pagan School called Children of the Dagda, specifically looking into all of these. And of all of the children of the Dagda that I have explored, she seems to be the one who has picked up the broadness of her father's skills, his talents, his abilities, and the way that he uses those in service of his people. The next one that we come across who has a significant impact on the stories is a guy called Cermait. And the significance of Kermit's impact is the fact that Kermit is slain. Kermit is slain by Lugh, who uh, really, Kermit had a tryst with one of Lugh's wives. Luke found out about it, killed Kermit, but then the Dagda, not willing to let go of his child, takes up the power of life and death in order to return his child to life. So there's a story known as How the Dagda Got the Club, or the Magic Club, and it is a story about parental grief. Like, he literally stops the corruption of his child's body. He then carries his adult child on his shoulders and leaves Ireland on a quest to find the power that he does not have at that point, which is command or authority over life and death. So it's a really good story. He does eventually find that power and brings Kermit back to life, and Kermit reprimands him for some of his behavior. And so he's not a perfect deity. Dagda is not a perfect deity. He's not omnipotent or omniscient. He has a lot of power, but he's not all powerful. He doesn't know everything, but he knows a lot. So Kermit's being raised right, in my mind, can speak to his father's injustices and remind him to be doing the right things. So later on, of course, Kermit does have children himself, and those three sons are the ones who seek revenge against Lugh for having killed Kermit, even though Kermit was brought back to life. And those three grandsons of the Dagda become the three kings in Ireland at the time that the Milesians invade. So the lineage carries on there. But there's a similar story to Kermit in a story about one of the other Dagda's children called Aed. Aed has a relationship with someone else's wife, but it's the wife of one of his bondsmen, and the bondsman slays him for it. Now, the Dagda at this point doesn't have the power over life and death, or he is king in Ireland, and so he can't just claim eye for an eye or undo what has been done. But instead, he has to give a kingly judgment against Corgran. And Corgran, who is the bondsman who has slayed Aed, is told to carry Aed's body on his shoulders until he can find a stone fit for Aed to be buried under. And so there are many similar narratives or similar kind of experiences in the story. It's hard to say which of those stories came first, but in this story, the loss or the grief of the Dagda cannot be ignored, but also it doesn't overrule his responsibilities as king in Ireland. So all of the time when we have these information, these little stories, these insights into his children, it is about how he supports them, what he does to care for them, but then also his obligations and his responsibilities to the greater community. So we get a view of the Dagda not just as a big daddy, but also the responsible elements of how do you raise your children right? How do you do right by them as well as do right by the community? So there are many other deities. He has other daughters, like there is the Anya. And a lot of people ask me about Anya, the daughter of the Dagda, and there's not a lot of content about Anya. We do have the Banhianicus, the lore of women, which does mention that she had a wicker basket given to her by her father, the Dagda, and that when the tide was in, the basket would be full and leak, but when the tide was out, the basket would be empty and dry. So It's an interesting one as to what is the rest of the story around there, but unfortunately, we do not have the rest of that story in any resources available at the moment. So you can't really talk about the children of the Dagda without talking about Oengus. Oengus being the young son of the Dagda, the child who is conceived and born all in one 9-month day because the Dagda uses authority over the sun to stop its motion in the sky. Engus's mother is Boan, the goddess who becomes the river Boyne, and they have a relationship. Like the Bowen is interested in the Dagda is interested in Bowen, but she is wed to somebody else, a guy called Elkmer. And in order to engage in their tryst, but not have her have any negative impact from that, the Dagda stops the sun for 9 months. So it all passes in one day. So Angus translates as unique vigor, but it's also this child, this temporarily out of sync child born, conceived and born all in a 9-month day. And Angus does form the main character in a number of different stories in the mythological cycle and even down into the Fenian cycle. So the lineage and the impact of the children of the Dagda is seen beyond the mythological cycle of Ireland. Hopefully this has been interesting. Hopefully it's been something which has answered a question for you or maybe created a question for you. Oh, I did mention that Dagda is a foster daddy. So the fostering was a very important cultural significance back then in that children were not deemed to be child solely of their mother and father. They were children of the community, children of the tribe. And so that's why fosterage was quite common. And one of the more famous deities who is a foster child of the Dagda is none other than Manannán mac Lir, the son of the sea. So leads to many other different and interesting explorations about Manannán and Manannán's influences if his foster father, the person who brought him up, is none other than the Dagda. But maybe more on that another time if you're interested. As I said, I taught a class over at the Irish Pagan School. I'll pop a link down below to that. It is called Children of the Dagda, where I do as best I can to go into each of these deities, to pull out the information and to provide what content and what insights we have from it, and then to look at the Dagda himself in his role as father. So, yeah, if you're interested, go pick up that class. And until next time, look after yourself, take care, and slán. Goodbye.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a positive review in your podcast listener. Then head over to irishpaganschool.com and enroll in one of our free or paid courses. Slán go fóill, and we will see you next time.